2 years ago, while speaking at a forum hosted by the Bush Center, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos told an anecdote about the early days of his company, when it was just him and 10 employees selling books out of his Seattle home. They were packing orders on a concrete floor when one of his workers had the most brilliant idea that doubled productivity. "I didn't have packing tables. I said to one of the software engineers who was packing alongside me, 'You know what we should do? We should get knee pads.' And he looked at me like I was the dumbest guy he had ever seen in his life, and he said, 'Jeff, we should get packing tables.' This is the richest man in the world, with a net worth of nearly $150 billion. The guy who had to be told that tables would be useful in a company that ships packages is now worth roughly double the GDP of Guatemala." A story came out recently about how Amazon's windfall from the COVID-19 pandemic might make Bezos the world's first trillionaire, reigniting the usual debates about inequality and whether or not billionaires, much less trillionaires, should exist. Bezos defenders invariably return to the mythology of how he started this online bookseller in his garage and built it into a globe-spanning e-commerce powerhouse. But as the aforementioned story about these humble beginnings shows, if the veil of this great man myth is pierced, one often finds men that aren't so great, or at the very least not worthy of the obscene wealth they've accumulated. Make the case that Bezos doesn't deserve his wealth, and you'll get some combination of 3 arguments. 1. He took the risk. Jeff Bezos took a big risk and he was rewarded accordingly, or so it's said. But he didn't. Not really. Bezos got his startup capital from 22 different friends and family, most of whom pitched in $50,000 each in exchange for a 1% share. They included associates from his brief career on Wall Street as well as various siblings and other relatives. His parents invested $250,000, which would be almost $500,000 today. It was Bezos' initial investors who absorbed the most risk. The main risk he took was alienating his friends and relatives if he failed and lost all their money. In the end, it paid off for everyone who bought a share on the cheap. His parents are multi-billionaires while his sister and brother are each pushing $1 billion. But the risk obviously paid off disproportionately for Bezos himself, who now owns 14%. To the extent that he was risking anything, what did he stand to lose? If his book business failed, he'd just go back to his cushy Wall Street job, where he'd earn a steady 6 figures and claw his way up to the C-suite eventually. Worst case scenario, he'd only be worth tens of millions instead of a $150 billion. Amazon workers risk so much more for so much less. They're risking their lives right now so that Bezos can be the first trillionaire. 8 Amazon workers have died since the COVID-19 crisis began and outbreaks have been reported at multiple warehouses. 2. He worked hard. It's probably true that Jeff Bezos worked hard, but so do most people. The average worker puts in 47 hours a week and nearly a third work 50 hours or more. They're not all billionaires. In fact, almost 2/3 of Americans live a precarious existence, unable to afford even a small emergency. Assuming you didn't have bills, food or rent, you'd have to work 2.5 million years to accumulate Bezos' net worth through ordinary labor at the median annual income of $59,000, and while Bezos probably put in a lot of hours during the first decade of his company, he's working progressively less as his net worth grows exponentially. He's part of the leisure class now, flying private jets to give talks in Davos and dividing his time between his massive multi-million-dollar vacation properties. Smith denounced landlords as parasites who love to reap where they never sowed, and demand a rent even for the natural produce of the earth. He favored both inheritance taxes and progressive taxation, writing that the rich should be taxed something more than in proportion to their wealth. He also recognized a fundamental asymmetry between capital and labor in terms of bargaining power, which drives down wages. Smith was likewise particularly far-sighted in his prediction of how the wealthy would corrupt democracy by pushing for laws that favored their own self-interest. Though Amazon is regarded as a capitalist success story, it would be anathema to Adam Smith. It's a huge industrial leviathan barreling toward monopoly. Amazon aggressively fights against any efforts of its staff to organize while sacrificing workers' well-being for the sake of profit. Free market ideologues who regard themselves as Smith's heirs focus almost exclusively on individuals, but he was concerned with the prosperity of entire societies. It has to be recognized that the individual can't be separated from the collective. Amazon's high profits are inversely correlated with its workers' low wages. Every dollar that it avoids paying in taxes is a dollar that can't be spent on affordable housing and other social programs. So the question of whether he deserves to be a trillionaire or a billionaire can't be asked in isolation. The real question, does he deserve to live luxuriously more than others deserve to live decently? The answer is no.